Hello and welcome back to Live from Paris. Owen Fairclough's here now for the latest business news. Owen, let's get straight down to it. In Spain, the European Central Bank is meeting there for a change.
Just for a change, Lorna, occasionally they do get out of Frankfurt for their monthly meeting. They might wish they'd stayed in the German city this time, though. Spain right now is a pretty tense place for anyone to go and hold a meeting as important as an ECB meeting where they have to decide on things like interest rates. Let's take this out to Sarah Morris, who's standing by in Madrid for us. Sarah, the ECB is meeting in Barcelona, but wherever they are in Spain, it's going to be pretty difficult there now, given the climate, economically speaking, where you are.
4%, and there's more than half of under 25s out of work, and that has provoked an enormous rejection of what many people see as the austerity measures led by the ECB. As a result, the government is expecting a lot of protests in Barcelona. They have had to ship in about 2,000 extra police force to ensure that some of those protesters don't turn violent and cause problems. We know in Barcelona there is a hardcore of people who cause trouble and ruin things for the peaceful protesters, but the unions have already said that they will be out protesting austerity policies, as will the Indignados, who of course are coming up for their anniversary in May.
Sarah, Lorna Shaddock here in the newsroom. Spanish banks really dined out, didn't they, on that refinancing operation by the ECB, but the ECB doesn't want to make a habit of that, so is there anything else it can do?
It's very difficult, isn't it? Because the ECB is under pressure to do more for growth policies in the Eurozone. And it, at the moment, has talked about pushing through structural reforms. Mario Draghi did say that he felt that there should be a growth pact as well as that fiscal pact, which, of course, forces countries to bring their deficits down. And there will be pressure, particularly since the Eurozone unemployment data yesterday went up to 10.9%. But in terms of Spain, the banks need to be recapitalized, and those banks, and some people say, will need public money or even money from the EU in the form of a bailout. The Spanish government has said absolutely not, and that it's sticking to austerity here.
OK, Sarah Morris in Madrid, thank you very much indeed for joining us. So, in a busy day in Europe, how have the exchanges opened so far?
Well, it's looking like there's a bit of optimism, Lorna, at least in Spain, where Sarah was talking to us from the IBEX, up around 0.5%. That's broadly the pattern across the European markets. It is a busy day. Of course, we're talking European bank financing. Sarah was talking there about the ECB. We're unlikely to see any great moves by the ECB, but of course, we'll keep an eye on that meeting for you later this Thursday. On the Asian markets, a little bit quiet and certainly thin in terms of trading. The Nikkei is shut now for the rest of the week. So the Hang Seng and the Shanghai had to pick things up. And you can see there, the Hang Seng finishing the day around 1/3% down.
Okay, and more write-downs as well for Société Générale. They've eaten into its earnings a bit.
Yeah, Société Générale is one of these banks that has to try and shore up its capital position, including the Spanish banks as well. And that's really what's eaten into its earnings, down some 20% for the first quarter. And its investment bank profits were even worse, having to unwind its position on toxic debts in the likes of places like Greece, down some 40%. I put BMW up there as well, a much better first quarter for the German car manufacturer, up 18% in terms of profits, and it's China car sales that are driving things here, more than 1/3 of its profits from China sales.
Now, they say elections are won and lost on the economy, and that was the battleground for the duel between Nicolas Sarkozy and François Hollande last night. Their live TV debate was dominated by how best to get France growing without breaking strict new budget rules. Shelley Sipwan has been following things.
If François Hollande wins the presidential election, European leaders could head straight to Brussels to renegotiate their fiscal treaty. That's what the socialist candidate told Nicolas Sarkozy during their 3-hour debate. According to Hollande, austerity has failed to save Europe. He says now Europe needs to stimulate growth.
Things are changing in Europe. It's a bit more complicated in Germany, but they're changing position as well. They're moving on the European Central Bank and Eurobonds. There's a new state of mind.
Sarkozy said there's no use renegotiating the treaty. He believes that austerity is necessary to reduce deficits and that making companies more competitive is the key to growth.
It's not enough to go to Europe and ask for change. There are 27 countries involved. The economic crisis is a global one. You think it's easy? We've avoided a catastrophe in Greece.
Sarkozy criticized Hollande's plan to hire tens of thousands of civil servants, mainly teachers, saying this would worsen France's debt. Hollande answered Sarkozy's economic results are so disappointing, the incumbent president has no lessons to give.
The public debt is due to the tax breaks that you gave the rich and to your inability to control public spending.
Hollande criticized the soaring unemployment during Sarkozy's mandate. It's now at 10%. The incumbent president replied most other European countries had worse results.
Well, let's take a brief look now at a couple of today's other business stories. Nokia will face shareholders over its disastrous recent performance at the company's annual meeting later this Thursday. The Finnish mobile phone maker lost 1.3 billion euros in the first quarter before its credit rating was downgraded to junk. And its return to US markets with the Lumia 900 was blighted by a network glitch. On Wednesday, Nokia waded into the patent wars by filing lawsuits against HTC and BlackBerry maker RIM.
And staying with patent battles, Microsoft has suffered one of the most significant defeats to date over copyright issues. A German court has banned sales of some of its biggest selling products, including the Xbox and Windows 7. That's after a patent infringement lawsuit from Motorola, now owned by Google. But a US court has told Motorola not to enforce the judgment until it rules on a similar case in the US. Next, a small but significant change of fortune for Greece. Its credit rating was downgraded to junk status amid a second €130 billion bailout earlier this year. It was even in technical default, according to some credit rating agencies. But Standard & Poor's has raised the bar on the country just slightly, thinking that Greece has now turned a corner. But the elections this weekend spell an uncertain future for Greece as both voters and politicians begin to kick back against the austere terms of that second bailout.
A battle over austerity being fought on the campaign trail. Greeks have endured 4 years of recession, unemployment rising over 21% and drastic cuts to pay and public services. The outgoing Prime Minister Lucas Papademos has warned his successor to stick with the unpopular austerity measures. The main parties are trying to sell their own versions of the cuts. The Socialist PASOK party wants them made over a longer period, 3 years instead of 2.
This is something more acceptable, not only for the Greek people, but also for the national economy.
Conservative New Democracy is selling growth as its election message. Their leader is hoping that by attacking PASOK, he can edge ahead in the polls.
They don't apologise to the Greek people who are now unemployed, whose lives were disrupted, and who saw the closure of their businesses.
But support for the two main parties has collapsed during the crisis. Even together, they may not win enough seats to govern. Political momentum is with those who oppose austerity, and this election may see the number of parties in Parliament double. The extreme-right Golden Dawn party, which blames the country's problems on illegal immigrants, is among those expected to win seats. Even if the pro-austerity parties can form a coalition after Sunday, it will be a shaky one. Greece is expected to announce its next round of cuts in June. Without an effective government, that may be a difficult hurdle.
Well, that's just about it for business news for today. Thanks very much indeed, Owen. And that's all from me for now as well. But do stay tuned. Stuart Norval will be here right after the weather with more news headlines. Do stay tuned.